Welcome to the Scent of Beauty. My name is Susan and this video is titled Friction, Responsibility / Accountability, Part 5. This is the final video in this series. We have taken a look at the irregularities on the surface that have caused us to have friction in our lives, because if you look at the irregularity on the surface, that determines whether we have low friction or high friction. This is based on science. Solid friction, dry friction, when we rub up against another human being, the tangible contact in regards to friction. We also discussed fluid friction, and in fluid friction, we learned how we have streamlined ourselves. By streamlining ourselves, we found a way to resist being dragged through fluid friction. We trace the friction back to childhood, when there was an offer that countered a child's nature in order to be nurtured into a perception of good by a caregiver. And as an individual develops without examining and cross-examining these conditioning, they learn to forego love for labels. A child gets a reward, a sticker. As an adult, we not only receive, but I think many times we settle for language that brings delight instead of action. Actually, actions, accountable actions, that's answerable for one's action. So we go for the delight of language, but we don't call for the actions that exemplifies love. Hence the friction. Mostly friction within ourselves, because we could have a world. We talked about having a world, but not necessarily life form in that world. And we settle for psychological synergy, subtotal parts of our being, subtotal relationship, instead of being the sum of who we are, our whole being, influenced by friction based on the irregular surfaces that was developed over time. The surfaces of unsurety, inferiority. But we have been introduced to Roberto Asaglioli, psychosynthesis. What a gift. The approach of expansion, expanding the boundaries, the feel by which we identify the center of our identity, our posterior self, our postulate self. That is a self that is based on our personal belief, not our childhood conditioning, and do I even say adulthood conditioning, based on our psychological advancement. Psychosynthesis, it's considered each individual unique in terms of purpose in life, and places value on the exploration of human potential, our being potential. And so we find ourselves at the threshold, And the threshold is one of the description is the sill, SILL, of a door. It's the level or point at which you start to experience something, and the experiences are true sense of well-being. You see a sill, right? It's like a tabular, it's a column, and it's described as a tabular sheet intrusion that has intruded between old layers. And I get that because the old layers that we have been trying to move beyond, what we have learned from just altruism love, that when we're not responsible and accountable for ourselves, we almost feel like we're intruding in our own lives. Our needs and our wants have become intrusions, and we become almost like a sedimentary rock, at least a belief system. And a sedimentary rock is a solid matter that is moved and deposit in a new location, and we go from one relationship to another as a hard, solid matter instead of a relaxed, total being. And with sediment, because of the sediment material, what happens also is that not only does it move from one place to another, but the process is erosion. That's the process. And the sills that we move upon are these thresholds that don't support who we truly are. We're not deposits in our lives. In our world, we could create. We have the opportunity and the power to create our new and updated threshold. And when I started looking into threshold, what was coming up was just unkept stills. But then I searched for luxurious thresholds, and there was a whole different world. And that's what the scent of beauty is. When we search it out and we look for specific components of ourselves, we start to develop the condition of abundance of great ease. When I took a look at luxury, it says something added to pleasure, the state of great comfort. That's who we are. That's the great wealth that we have within ourselves. Refinement of living instead of failures, which is only an idea. Because as I said numerous times, our system does not support failings. Luxurious threshold support extravagant living, and that's what we deserve. And that could only be done in a conscious state of mind. When I pulled up luxurious threshold, the first thing that I've noticed is that there is an owner and an investor, and they're responsible and accountable for who comes in. But they don't just take anyone, because the way and the investment is known by the threshold. So at the threshold, there is hope and there is life. It's known upon entering, and there is a feeling of invitation, of welcome, of care, and you know you're entering the best. When that's the layout, there is no friction, there is no wandering. because looking forward and looking out, we see the scent of beauty. And it's not for others to see first and foremost. It's for us as individual to know who we are, the gift that we have to offer. When we own it and cultivate it, synthesis is to create. It's a process, but a process begins at the threshold. Welcome to the Scent of Beauty. My name is Susan. Thank you for listening.